Ladies and gentlemen, welcome again to episode 4. I'm really excited to move on in this episode. So far, Napoleon's Bonaparte reign was marked by a series of sweeping reforms aimed at reshaping France into a modern, efficient state, from creating its own holidays, like the celebration of Saint Napoleon, to uniting the old aristocracy with the rising middle class. Napoleon sought to consolidate power and create a unified society. His most lasting reforms, such as the Napoleonic Code and the decentralization of government, laid the foundations for a new France. But despite his promises of liberty and equality, his rule was filled with contradictions. Napoleon's interpretation of popular sovereignty relied heavily on the plebiscite, a direct vote where citizens decide on specific issues like constitutional changes or government policies. Unlike representative democracy, where elected officials make decisions, plebiscites allow the electorate to vote directly. During Napoleon's time, this form of direct democracy became a key feature of political life, influencing its use throughout the 19th century and paving the way for modern universal suffrage. Plebiscites have historically been used by governments to seek public approval on major issues, such as legitimizing regimes, annexing territories, or changing political systems, while intended to reflect the will of the people. They are often tools of authoritarian or semi-authoritarian regimes to lend legitimacy to decisions that might not otherwise gain popular support. Often associated with moments of significant political change, plebiscites have been used to validate decisions on territorial expansions. However, they are frequently criticized for being manipulated to ensure favorable outcomes, especially when ruling authorities control the process of or suppress dissent. For example, during the Italian Risorgimento, plebiscites were used to justify territorial annexations and unify Italy, like in 1861. Yet their integrity has been questioned as cultural works like Tomasi di Lampedusa's The Leopard. It's an Italian opera called Il Gattopardo, and the subsequent development into a movie in a Visconti's film adaptation highlight how dissenting votes were often suppressed or ignored. The Leopard or the Gattopardo is written by Giuseppe Tomasi di Lampedusa. It's a historical novel where they explore the decline of the Sicilian aristocracy during the unification of Italy in the 19th century, known as the Risorgimento. Published posthumously in 1958, the novel is considered one of the greatest works of Italian literature. Then later, in 1963, Luchino Visconti directed a highly acclaimed film adaptation of The Leopard, starring Burt Lancaster, Alain Delon, and Claudia Cardinale. The film is noted for its stunning visuals and faithful representation of the novel's themes. And let's go back to the plebiscites. Despite their flaws, plebiscites marked a shift from earlier forms of governance. Before this era, no sovereign would have considered submitting measures to a public vote. In this sense, plebiscites embody the contradictions of Napoleon's legacy. They represent a flawed and often undemocratic tool, yet they also signify a step toward greater public participation, laying the groundwork for democratic systems that we know and we enjoy today. Napoleon's rise to power was closely tied to plebiscites, which marked key milestones in his rule. In 1800, a plebiscite confirmed the establishment of the consulate. In 1802, another made him consul for life, and by 1804, yet another declared him emperor. Even during the chaotic 100 Days of 1815, Napoleon introduced a new constitution and submitted it to a plebiscite while preparing for war. These plebiscites used universal male suffrage, allowing men over 21, including the illiterate, to vote. However, voter turnout was inconsistent and often very low. For instance, in 1802, plebiscites for consul for life saw 47% participation, while the 1815 plebiscite had only 22%. Such figures might be viewed in the context of a society emerging from the ancien regime, where monarchs ruled by divine right, and seeking the opinions of commoners was unheard of. The voting process lacked transparency. Votes were written in registers sent to Paris, where they were tabulated by the Ministry of the Interior. Some registers were lost, while others were altered. In the army, votes were often cast collectively by raising hands. The results consistently favored Napoleon, of course. For example, the 1800 plebiscite for the consulate reported 3.6 million votes in favor and just 8,000 votes against. A supporter once called it democracy purged of its inconveniences. Although the plebiscites gave the appearance of public participation, many felt mocked rather than genuinely included. Still, they introduced some elements of civic engagement, particularly in the election of local departmental assemblies. These assemblies, composed of property owners and influential figures, Napoleon called them notables. These became the foundations of his new administrative structure. Napoleon Empire was in essence an empire of notables. This was a departure from the hereditary aristocracy of the past. Instead, leadership was based on merit, wealth, and influence. These individuals formed a new ruling class that stood apart from the broader population, embodying Napoleon's vision of a society where success and leadership were tied to achievement rather than birthright. At the core of Napoleon's policies lies the concept of property ownership. During the Revolution, church properties were confiscated and sold, aiming to turn many French citizens into property owners, even if on a small scale. Napoleon continued this policy throughout his empire, ensuring that national land sales were structured to prevent wealthy elites from monopolizing the properties. His decrees explicitly stated that land should be distributed widely, enabling as many people as possible to become landowners in a predominantly rural societies. Small landowners were seen as natural allies of the regime and opponents of revolutionary upheaval. In Italy, when church properties were confiscated, Napoleon's instructions from Paris were clear. The political goal of His Majesty is to create property owners. This goal was tied to a broader strategy of fostering loyalty and stability. Napoleon demanded detailed reports from prefects across his empire, not just about land sales, but also about the people. He wanted comprehensive lists of individuals who mattered in each city and department, those who could be trusted, nominated for councils, appointed to administrative posts, or rewarded with decorations. These notables formed the backbone of the empire, a class Napoleon sought to expand and tie closely to his rule. Meritocracy was central to Napoleon's vision. He believed in rewarding talent and achievement, whether in science, engineering, geography, education, and the arts. For Napoleon, the system of merit was not a form of inequality, but an opportunity to open to anyone capable of rising through their abilities. Distinguished sculptors, writers, and poets were often brought to Paris, celebrated, and given honors and appointments. Napoleon's idea of merit extended beyond the elite and found its broadest expression in the army. For many, the military offered a pathway to recognition and advancement. reflecting the principle that success could be achieved through skill and dedication. This approach combined the promotion of individual merit with a broader strategy to create a loyal and stable society rooted in property ownership and a merit-based hierarchy. One of Napoleon's most famous slogans was every soldier carries a marshal's baton in his knapsack, symbolizing this ethos. While few soldiers became marshals of France, many rose through the ranks to become officers. Remarkably, three-quarters of Napoleon's officers started as ordinary soldiers, a stark contrast to other European armies where only about 10% of officers rose from the ranks. Napoleon's military was a more democratic institution offering advancement based on merit rather than birthright. Napoleon also inspired loyalty with his belief that a leader is a dealer in hope. Soldiers believed in the possibility of rising through the ranks, and even those who didn't achieve high rank benefited from recognition of their service. Pensions were provided for soldiers, along with support for widows, orphans, and the wounded. An extensive welfare system supporting hundreds of thousands of families, unmatched in other European countries. It was a novelty. Officers, meanwhile, were well paid and became part of the empire's notable class. Upon retirement, and often by securing their status in society as new landowners or business owners, Napoleon's legacy is defined by his complex vision for France, one that blended revolutionary ideas with authoritarian rule. His reforms, like the Napoleon Code and centralized government, laid the foundations for modern France, while his contradictions left a lasting impact on history. As we move into our next episode, we'll explore how Napoleon's dream of glory shaped not only his reign but also the very fabric of French society, offering a deeper look at the tension between ambition and stability that marked his empire. Well, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I think that the experience that the army offered to Napoleon gave him a regimental and like a very fixed idea on meritocracy, because Napoleon was also one that rose through the ranks either in his political career later on and as an officer. So he sought to establish the same rules for, let's say, the same philosophy to his soldiers, to his army. And that was something that was unheard of in the time, because military officers, like for example in the British Army, these spots were just reserved for people who had nobiliary titles, and those positions were addressed those for the few fortunate. Instead, in Napoleon was more of a merit-based opportunity to have more people rise through the ranks, and also instill this idea that if you work hard for something, you might achieve something with your life and get better at it. And I think this is one of the best parts that I really enjoyed and liked in Napoleon's history. Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is it for episode 4, and I will see you next time for episode 5. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you are enjoying this series. And once again, bye.